Welcome back to Awakening in Health. You are listening to Dennis O'Connor, and I am with Tom Barnett this morning, a man with many talents who is a scholar of natural law and even of health. And Tom has been studying this topic for many years now. Before the break, we just left off with a very, very important topic around the mental health of men in general. And we kind of touched about, I guess, letting go of diagnosis, especially things like depression and anxiety, and maybe the necessity to not be trapped in some of those paradigms of thinking along the lines of diagnosis, and how, as men, we can maybe inspire, help each other, or even just have that recognition that there are more options available than we actually think, or that are actually being given to us by the mainstream paradigm. And that's one of my bugbears, Tom, especially from having worked in the mainstream industry in mental health for a number of years. This overt focus of the pill to treat all ails, and the absolute lack of focus of the fact that things like depression and anxiety are very, very manageable and very fixable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, everything's definitely fixable. So the problem isn't like a lack of drugs or a lack of whatever, and you probably weren't born that way. So it's definitely something that's accrued over time, the way we're relating to ourselves, and that leading to the actions and therefore the consequences. So let's say we don't particularly like a circumstance, rather than deal with it or relate to it and ourselves properly, we may eat the wrong foods. We may consume medications, whether that be pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be, indulge in promiscuous sex, indulge in whatever. So in these respects, that's curable, obviously. That's a fixable part of life. And it stems from not really getting to the core, the way people allow these conditions to perpetuate.
So one of the focuses that I have, which is massively overlooked, is the importance of the gut microbiome, and how, actually making good changes to your diet, drinking clean water, the physical components. If you were to pull a figure out of your head, and I know this is very arbitrary, how important is that mindset and that connection with spirit and the more esoteric things that we talked about before the break? How would that balance up to those physical things?
To me, they're more important, because if that's not there, then the physical stuff doesn't transmute properly. So if we don't relate properly, if we don't feel and connect properly, it doesn't really matter what we do in the physical, it just doesn't carry over.
And if you can open that up a bit, so again, maybe there's some people listening to this show this morning who are on medications and have been for 20 years, and they're struggling to do exercise. They're struggling to find a way out there. They're feeling that they have to push on with the martyrdom for the sake of their family. How do you break that cycle?
Well, it's a choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice, and it's very simple in its flow and effect. But at the end of the day, you've got to make that. The word even to decide or a decision. It's actually to cut. That's what the original meaning of that word is. So it's cutting off from that which is that old story, that old loop that is keeping us there. It's what led us into it, and it's what's keeping us there. So the first thing is making a decision. The second thing, though, is like really having a proper plan, because if you do have a lot of balls in the air, you are going to drop them if you don't put a proper plan into place. The third part of that, Dennis, is that, the further you've gone into something, you've been on a certain diet or you've been on medications for 20 years, you don't just drop that immediately. You don't just ditch the medication. You don't just like switch everything up overnight. You can, but does your body handle it? Does your mind and spirit handle it? Or does it shut down? So, like the circumstances you're in, you've got to make a very, pragmatic assessment of where you're at and what the next step is. So when I was a practitioner and I treated people one-on-one, no matter where they were, we would just look at, first of all, really being honest about where they are, getting some kind of acceptance and honesty about where they are, and then looking at the next step that's in front of them. So not focusing on having to ditch the medications, change this part of the diet, change this part of the routine, quit that job, start this new business. Like, that's too much. So what's the one thing? What's the next step in front of you? And just focus on that. Realize that there's other change that will occur over time, the next week, the next month, and realistically the next number of years, not overnight. And what's the next step? And then what's the next 1 or 2 steps? And just focus on those. And that's how we can move in the right direction.
And we've got a lot of even societal challenges as well, haven't we? We seem to have this attack on strength, and this attack on maybe what you might call a strong vulnerability. Very muchly men feel they have to be stoic, and that there's this big push for that lack of recognition of men's place in society at the expense of kind of I guess elevating the females in men's roles. Even what would your thoughts on something like that be?
Well, I know how society treats it. I treat it way differently. It's only an offer. And I think it's a really stupid, backwards offer. So I just don't allow it. So my role as a man is to provide and protect. I don't care what somebody else tells me. I don't care what woman wants to go and be a CEO or whatever. I just don't allow it. It's just not how my world operates. And so that's part of the essence of being a man. It's providing the framework as well. It's like, that's silly. We're not going in that direction, because that's going to lead to ill health, everything. That's going to lead to an ill society. So we're not going to allow it. So you just look at it as the offer. It's like, that's a stupid offer. You can keep that one. And this is what we're going to do instead. It's as simple as that. Because I think the mistake that is being made is that a lot of men want to form like man-woman circles and cry on each other and do all this sort of stuff. I'm not saying men shouldn't have emotions. I'm not denigrating what people are doing. I'm just saying you can skip that part and just get back to what you are. We don't have to just have this part of being a man that's all stoic, but stoicism is also an extremely powerful part of manhood, because that does give us that resilience. It does give us that calmness in the face of potential, in the face of a storm. But it's just, how is it inverted? That's the thing, because society inverts things. It takes the masculine and inverts it. It takes the feminine and inverts it. So something like stoicism is actually a very powerful thing. When it's inverted, it's extremely destructive. And like everything else, you just got to look at the reality of it. So what you can do in the face of that is just look at it as the offer that it is, reclaim what is real, not the inversion, and just live that. It's just, you just have to do it. It's really, really simple.
How can the general man decipher where the accurate advice lies and where the inaccurate advice lies? So, for example, he goes to the GP, he's really struggling, insomnia, sleeplessness, health problems, and he goes to see that psychologist or that counselor, and that person advises him to join the men's group where they're crying together and giving each other hugs, and I guess endorsing the cage of a diagnosis.
Yeah, well, that's how do you learn discernment? The first thing you have to do is, for me, my opinion on that, I don't necessarily know an exact answer to give, but my opinion on that is that you need to get to know yourself first, because otherwise I just don't think it's possible to have good discernment while you are outsourcing. It's like, well, should I trust this doctor or that doctor? It's like, the answer is none. You trust yourself. You've got to get back to ways that you can get back to knowing yourself, and to have that trust in your inner self and your creator. That's it. And then once you've got that, you will exercise then and hone that element of intuition. And as a man, your intuition will also be backed up by your knowledge and your skill set in life. So let's say you're a guy who's done fighting sports for your life. Like, at least you don't have to be professional, but just you've got a feeling for hand-to-hand combat, right? So then if you're in an environment where there's certain men around and there might be drinking going on over here and you've got to get down that alley over there, somebody with no experience in combat sports, for example, might have zero discernment about what's going on and could potentially lead himself and his loved ones into a very dangerous situation. Whereas somebody with that experience and that skill set can then rely on the intuition, because it's backed up by the knowledge and the experience, to really know how to navigate that particular environment in the safest possible way, and never have to use violence, because they never put him in a situation where violence is needed. And so likewise, if you have zero knowledge on health and zero experience looking after yourself because you've never trusted yourself, because you've never known yourself, I don't believe it's possible to have good discernment, because you're just going to take one doctor's advice and then another doctor's advice and then go on YouTube and get a really good look at influencer's advice. And you're going, I think I'm going to go with option C. And it's like, none of those are the right answer. They can be, though, if it's running through a good filter, your discernment based on experience and knowledge and the ability to tap into your own intuition. And that's where it will come from.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. That was when you were mulling over that question, I just realized myself, holy cow, that's a tricky one. So you did well getting around that one. But another thing that kind of came up as you were chatting there, it's a thing that I tell my clients as well, is it's a very, very powerful question. Sometimes the most power is in those simple questions. Is that question, is this working for me? And if the answer is yes, keep doing it. If the answer is no, you got to make a change. And the other thing that pops up as you're going through that is you're allowed to try and fail. And in fact, when you try and fail, some of your most powerful answers come from that failure. And that strength that you get from that can really have a very healthy way of adding to that discernment that you are talking about. Great advice there for people who are really struggling. Is the answer how will I phrase this? And I'm conscious of phrasing these questions again along my own bias as opposed to try to be neutral. And I'll probably just put it out there really that I have a very strong bias against finding solutions in bottles, and I think it's such a tragedy. And by bottles, I guess you can talk about anything. You can talk about alcohol. I'm probably more directly referring to medications. I think it's such a tragedy that the system is built to perpetuate this myth that the only solution is an indefinite and ongoing solution from a prescription. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, again, that's an offer, and that's the primary offer. So I'll put it this way: if you go into any kind of store, what you're going to be offered is the product or service that benefits the store the most, right? Monetarily, through status, through recognition, or any kind of currency that you can name. However, if you go in and you say the right sort of things, you're a bit worded up and you're in the know, you'll get a better deal. They'll be like, actually, well, that one's not actually, this is the one we're told to sell to everybody. But hey, actually, if you want a better one, it's this one over here. Right? Or, hey, you don't have to need to pay that. Well, I'll get you the discount. It's this much. It's this much if I know you. It's this much if I don't know you, right? And it's like everything that is offered in the mainstream. Like the first things that are offered are the ones that give the most profit. Whether that profit is in a monetary sense or it's your essence, your attention, whatever currency, it's all going to whatever's the highest profit. So then if though it is known, or the offerer can feel out that you're not just, this isn't your first rodeo, then you'll get a different offer or a better offer. Or because you'll put in a counter offer, you'll be getting a better deal or whatever the case may be. And that's what it's like, when we're offered, when it's pushed so much, again, that's another word for an offer, to just medicate, or it's allopathic is what it's called. If you have this, you take that, like your solution is this. It's not, work on yourself. It's not meditate. It's not spend more time in nature. It's not get to know yourself. It's you have this, you take something for it, right? That's just the paradigm that that is pushed. Oops. But again, it's just the offer. So in order to break that, in order to be more empowered with these offers, it's seeing it for that and going, all right, is this the best thing? Is this the only thing? Do I have to do that? Is there another way? And simply by that inquisition and the art of asking questions, immediately new doors open up, right? Like because your awareness is there, you're not blind to there being other possibilities. And if you seek, you'll find. So just by asking questions, just questioning what's put in front of you puts a distance between you and it. So therefore, it's not this is the only thing, and it's upon you. You give yourself distance. We all know that feels way better to have distance between you and a problem, so you can think about it, you can breathe, you can assess it, you can look at it from a different angle, you can turn your back on it altogether and go, well, let's go in this direction instead. That doesn't feel right to me at all, no part of it. So then that's what I think most people are afraid of doing if they're in the situation where it's like, oh, but that's the only option, or that's all they're telling me. Ask someone else, ask a better question. ask yourself a question first. Does this feel right? Does this really seem like that's a solution to, my predicament? And then you'll find, and this is the other, I should just clarify as well, Dennis, I'm not against guys getting together and if guys have to get together and cry because that's a safe place for them to do because they've never had a chance to do that since they were a kid. I'm not against that. I'm not putting it down. I'm also just suggesting that it's not necessarily the answer. It's but that's the thing. You can question it and then you'll find, and if you don't have good influence around you, find it. If you can get around guys that, because I like what you said, it's look at how they're presenting, because success leaves clues and the body doesn't lie. So if you're around people that are facilitating men's groups, but they don't really look or feel like they're vibrant, happy, healthy, they've got energy to perform in life, they've got a good family around them, they've got a good business, whatever the case may be, it's it's okay to use it if there's nothing else, but just keep looking, keep questioning. And then you can find yourself around an environment that's going to be more suitable for where you're at on your journey. And also that can allow you to surpass that and then move to something else.
Great answers, Tom. So what I'll do is we might I'll give you an opportunity to tell people more about where they can get you and get in touch with you. And I know you're a little bit time limited, so we might wrap up the radio show part of it in the next 5 minutes or so, and then just take a little bit of a deeper dive into, for as long as you can spare for me, Tom, into some of the other stuff. But who are you? What are you doing? And are you in a situation to be able to help people in the manner that you're talking about, and if so, how what's the mechanism by how you do that? So give what you're doing a bit of a plug if you want, please.
Sure, yeah. Well, my social media is easy to find. It's tombarnett.tv on Telegram and Instagram, and just my name, Tom Barnett, on Facebook. I'm very shadow banned on all of those platforms, so you kind of have to actively follow as opposed to just let the algorithms feed you what I put there. But I regularly put tips like that. I usually post all my interviews there. But also I have my own website, which is tombarnett.tv. And that's where all my old content and interviews and everything that goes on every channel ends up on that. So it's just simply there as something that hopefully just doesn't get taken down, and you can find all the old content. To actively get engaged in your learning, we have the Living Free Movement. And Living Free Movement is several platforms of empowerment from the legal and lawful side of things and remedies that are in there. Health and natural health, various ways to optimize yourself naturally and take responsibility for your health. We have a growing section, which is how to live off grid, how to grow food, alternative solutions to energy and building and what have you. We have a spiritual side, which is a non-religious look at the lessons in the Bible, which is essentially a book on commerce and the rules of society. And then we have the Optimize Me and Academy series, which is a course you can go through, which is free on the platform. And soon to be released, we have Date Me, which is a way to socialize with people that are much more like-minded than the rest of society, and Private Marketplace coming up, which is dealing with goods and services in the private. And in the private means it's a pure agreement between parties. So there's no third parties in that, regulators, taxes, and all that sort of stuff. So that's all on the Living Free Movement, which you can find at livingfreemovement.org. And you can get an all-access pass on there, which is well worth. It's only $200 for the year, which is it's way less than it should be, but we just want to be inclusive and make sure people can access that kind of information. The learning platform itself, plus the community that's there, which is very, very supportive, and I think is the most valuable.
Excellent. And people obviously can reach out to me as well. It's Dennis, DENNIS, at awakeninginhealth.com. And there's not many people who, Tom, I actually would recommend that people have a look at, to be honest with you. I think, some people have great avenues to go down. But in relation to your knowledge about the kind of common law, the ways of finding your standing, about identifying who you are, and you align very closely as well with some of the kind of physical health material that I teach. So I'd highly recommend that people at least give you a look. And if, especially again, as we said at the beginning of the week, if people are struggling, there are certainly options. And like we labored on that point, don't just settle. If it's like going into a car yard, you don't go into a car yard, especially a second-hand car yard, and ask the guy in the yard, how much is that car, and pay him that amount of money. It just never happens. Your health should be the same. You don't accept the first offer. There's almost always a better offer around. Tom, we'll wrap up the radio side of this now, but I really do thank you for your time and your generosity and giving such great information for this part of the show this morning. Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Fantastic. That was great. Really, really good, mate. So yeah, listen, for I don't know how many more minutes you got. Yeah, are you happy if I throw a few more questions at you? Fantastic. So one of the things that is very, very contentious, and it's out there. And I had the opportunity to interview Andrew Kaufman when I was in Mexico for an Acapulco. Was what basically got you off the mark about are viruses real? So if you want to just throw something out about that.
Yeah, okay. So that's it's a really interesting journey, because for me, I was very well educated, as in academics, going through school and then into college. One of the things that I thought was hugely bad was when I got really sick, and that was in my very early 20s. And I was still studying. I kind of dropped out of college. I was going into entrepreneurship, running a business, competing as an athlete. And I'd just been studying medicine, but I continued the studies outside of college. Anyway, within a couple of years, I'd gotten really, really sick. I'd burnt right out. I'd had severe chronic fatigue, not knowing what it was at the time. And I went back to all of my professors. I was like, because I'd worked in labs and stuff, I had a good relationship with professors and lecturers and scientists and medical doctors and specialists and what have you. And none of them could offer any kind of real answers or help. I'm very indoctrinated at this point with the medical system, like viruses, bacteria, fungus, all that kind of stuff. But I've also now switched into natural health, because I'm realizing that it's not really what I thought it was in the beginning. And now I'm finding people like Paul Chek, who in my early learnings was one of my greatest influences, as a holistic way to look at things. I never knew it was all connected: the mind, the body, the emotions and the spirit. I didn't know that all affected the physical body. So Paul really, really opened up my world in that respect. Now, funnily enough, Paul these days still seems to kind of do the germ theory thing. But through Paul's work, I found Rudolf Steiner. And through Rudolf Steiner's work, I also found Antoine Bécham's work. And I found that those guys had a very, very different view on viruses in particular. And I was like, okay, well, this kind of makes some logical sense. Like, I'm really going down this natural route now. Like, I realize food makes a huge difference in the quality, the way nutrients work in the body, the way it relates to our choices and all of that. And I'm going, all right, it kind of makes some sense, but I've got to try this. And thankfully, like now I say thankfully, at the time I wasn't thankful. I was in a situation where books and knowledge was not enough. I was in a really dire situation at the time, and I really didn't care if I lived or died. I had absolutely zero energy. And when I say zero, I mean, it's different from everyone knows what it's like to be tired or fatigued. Chronically fatigued is you are in a shell and you are not actually even alive. Like, it's a different level of tired and fatigued and just not there at all. And so I was really desperate. I didn't care if I was dead or alive or whatever. So I had to experiment with it. And through various levels of experimentation of trying to infect myself, I couldn't catch a virus or anyone else's disease. Now, the most interesting part about this, though, Dennis, is that at the time, I was getting sick 13 times in a year. Now, we live in a 12-month lunar calendar system, but there are 13 moots. There are 13 lunar cycles in a year. So technically speaking, I was sick every lunar moot of the year, which is crazy, with a cold or a flu. At 25, you're supposed to be in your prime, health and fitness wise. And so I was, quote unquote, immunosuppressed, right? I would catch anything and everything, apparently, according to germ theory. But I'm like, all right, well, I got to try this. So I tried mucus, blood, sweat, sexual fluids, could not get myself an infection from somebody else who was exhibiting infectious symptoms, despite being prone to 13 colds or flus a year and fungal infections and whatever. So through more experimentation with that, and then getting more into this idea of our terrain, our internal environment really is the ultimate determination of our expression or our resonance in the world, well, things change completely. My fear of others and my reliance on something else to be the solution to or the safe keeper of my health just vanished. And I realized it was all inside of me. And all of a sudden, wow, what a relief. Like, this is a way better world to live in, rather than thinking that I'm under attack of like microscopic things I can't even see, or other people coughing, or whatever the case may be.
So are you saying then, Tom, that you essentially, you kind of created your own reality when you were really sick by believing you had this chronic fatigue illness that might have been caused by Lyme disease or some genetic component or some horrible bug that was in there. And you then stumble across these people who were totally challenging that paradigm. Beauchamp's a great example, by the way, and Steiner had some excellent things there. So I really like those as two references that you used. But first of all, you then you're getting sick every month. Your previous thoughts were, I've caught something, and now I'm sick because of that catching. And then you because of your knowledge, your newfound knowledge, you started testing that hypothesis of seeing if you could catch something in between those cycles, and it just didn't happen. So then you're thinking, holy shit, these guys who are initially saying something that I thought was outlandish, there's more to it than that. And as soon as the penny dropped, was it your whole energetic being that changed, or did you tap into a placebo effect, or did you manifest? What's your idea of what happened in order for you to drop what is, some people say, an incurable disease?
Well, my health didn't like jump. I mean, it did. I got a lot more energy from that. That was an energetic thing. That was like an energetic body that was released then. So rather than a base resonance of fear, I was just that started to relax and let go. I had way more faith in things. Therefore, the natural flow of life and energy that is there to sustain us at all times, I was cut off from that. So therefore, it was me trying to force it all for myself. And that's not where our energy comes from. It comes from what put us here and sustains us. So I tapped back more, not all completely, but more into that. So my energy did go up like many, many percents overnight without changing anything else. I wasn't completely better because I had so much other stuff to work through. I still had physical things I needed to work through and detoxify as well, such as, mercury and all the other stuff. But at the same time, that was a huge release for me, and my energy did go up. So it was an energetic thing more than anything else.
It's interesting, yeah, because one of the people that I came across a few years back was, have you heard of Florence Scoven Shin? She's got a great little book. She was a person around in about the 1890s to the 1920s, and she's got it's actually a 2-hour audiobook. I'll send you the link if I remember that. It's called The Secret of Life and How to Play it, or The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's a little bit weighted towards a religious aspect, but again, such brilliant concepts that people have known about for a long time. About one of the little things that she says in that book, which reminds me of what you're saying, is that ships only come in on calm seas. And what you're kind of implying there is just that the importance of just letting go and allowing that energy to travel towards you, whether that's in your health or even your abundance. Let's tangent off then to the kind of more abundance side of things. So you before the break, we're talking about being homeless, being destitute, being in not caring whether you lived or died, to seemingly, either if you're not already there, having some abundance, and even that's a little bit subjective, to being in a more of a state of flow now. What did that look like for you, that journey?
It was a long one, filled with a lot of doubt as well along the way. It was when the doubt kept falling away that things started to really improve. So realizing that I had to make a decision. So what I was doing at the beginning of that was I was still focusing on all of the things that I couldn't do. And it was true. I couldn't run like I used to. I couldn't lift like I used to or compete. I didn't have the energy to put into a day's work like I had, but I was focusing on what I couldn't do. And therefore life was terrible. So when I realized, I got to the stage where I was like, I need to let go of all those, getting back to all of those things, because that's what I thought I was, but clearly it's not. So then I started focusing on what I could do instead. All right, I can't do that. That's all right. Don't focus on that now. Just focus on what you can do. And when I started doing that, then things started to flow a lot better. And accepting what those things were, not comparing them to other people or what I was or anything like that, or what my ego decided I should be. And then just following that. And then over time, getting a different relationship with value, currency, money, my values in life, not just value, but my values, and the way I relate to the world that I live in. But that was a definite journey. That took me a long time. I think more time than it needs to take people. But nowadays, I do feel like
Sorry, I was just reflecting, and it's also, I mean, when we talk about addiction, certainly, and I'm kind of formally trained in addiction, we they talk about ambivalence, and it's very, I think it's there's a lot of things in those mainstream areas that I don't disagree with, probably much more so than I do, but the idea of ambivalence where we waver, we kind of come up and down, and we can be in a place where we're really kicking some good goals from an esoteric point of view and an energy point of view, but we can stumble, and that's allowed. That's humanity. It's not necessarily a case of just hitting that pinnacle and staying there. Things come up for us, intergenerational trauma, whatever it is. But yeah, so are you? Where are you now? Are you in a place of a kind of calm acceptance? Are you worried about life? Do you see? I mean, there's a lot going on in the world in relation to new viruses, wars, whatever. What's that like for what's as a because again I listen to your stuff and you've got a great confident way of presenting and with great clear masculine authority, which I really enjoy. But is that fully you? Who I don't know if that question made a lot of sense, but hopefully you can make some sense of it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I don't have any worries about that stuff at all because I know that stuff's only a paradigm and it's only an offer. And the degree to which you are still tapped into that world for your safety, your security, your value, your worth, all of those things is the degree to which those offers will affect you. But once you start standing on your own 2 feet and you're on that journey of getting to know yourself, and I never pretend that I'm all the way there, but I'm definitely on that journey. And the reason I know that I'm on that journey is because I don't worry about that sort of stuff. I'm far more invested, and that's a key term, in myself and what it is that I'm creating, because I've started to find my own value, my own worth, my own uniqueness in this world. And I'm just working with that. And the more I work with that, the less hard work actually is. It used to be very hard. Now it's not as hard anymore. I don't have a lot of monetary abundance, according to like what most people would assume that looks like. But in reality, I do, because I don't have to think about filling my car with fuel or going out to eat a meal or buying whichever cut of steak is at the plate. Like I used to be like, oh no, wait, how many dollars a kilo is this one? How many dollars a kilo? Wait, how much is fuel? Is it going to be 5 cents a liter less next week? And I would be defined by that. Now it's not even a thought. Now I don't have millions of dollars. I can't go for a holiday to Hawaii tomorrow if I want to, but that's also not the purpose of my life. So the way that I use money and currency is simply to get me to the next step in front of me. And that's not to have a Ferrari. That's to provide more of the value and work with the value that I've been given and use that in the world. And I have enough money to support that, and I don't have to think about it. So in my own reality, for me, I am abundant in money. From somebody else's point of view, they go, but you don't own a house. You don't have flashy stuff. I'm like, no, but I have what I need. And so I want a house. Like I want to work on extending my innate value to have more money, but I'm not fixated on it. I'm very happy and in a flow with things. And in that respect, I feel very abundant in all the ways that I need abundance. I have, all of that sort of stuff. So life has been getting a lot easier for me from being very homeless and very fighting the system, thinking everything's unfair. This world, it's a horrible system. It's so destructive. Capitalism's terrible. Money's terrible. It's the reason that everything's bad. People are all stupid, all that sort of stuff. And gradually that's all fallen away. And that world is there. I can see it, but I'm not in it. There's an expression in the Bible that says, be in the world, but not of the world. And the way that looks for me is that I can see it, and it's there. If I want to look at it, it's there. But also there's many, many other versions of that world, which is my world, which I can choose to participate in. And the thing is, it's a default mechanism. The more I'm invested in that world, the less I have to invest in my world. And therefore, the world is crap. There is going to be another war. There is going to be more financial, woe. There are going to be more, whatever. So it's not to say they're not there, but they don't have to be in your world, because if you invest your time, your energy, and find your gifts that is only within you, you will create a new world that's far more, it's not that world at all. And other people are welcome to it, but you have this one. And that's what it comes down to, especially as a man. I think for women, it's probably different, because usually you get involved in a man's world to help co-create that. But just talking from a man's point of view, I know it's very real to be able to provide that new structure, that new framework, and build it. And it's not really work in the process.
Yeah, there's some very great observations there, Tom. It's really about being present, isn't it, as well? And I see even just around me currently people who are striving. They're working 2 jobs. They're doing 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. Their little children are under 5. They're missing their father. The wife's bored. They're fighting. And really, what's it for? Especially when we know how precarious global situations are. And I'm kind of on a similar journey myself as well. It really, I don't want to focus on 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I might not get there. The important part for me is now, what I'm doing here, what I'm doing now. And when you do have that focus, there's a great calmness that comes along with that, isn't there? That letting go of the fear of that lack. Yeah, it's that either lack of abundance or abundance mindset.
It's also been the way I use these terms a lot. It's being active rather than reactive. I think a man needs to be active. If you're invested in that other world, you're constantly reacting to everything. That takes a lot of energy. Even in sport, if you're the one, that is more active, you're the one dominating or setting the pace. You're the one and making everyone else react to you. They're getting tired. They're the ones that are like second guessing, and you're the one that's just, you're using less energy. You're dominating the field of play, so to speak. You're scoring more points and you're winning the game. So it's like being active is creating from your place, not reacting to the rest of the world, other people's offers, creating offers of your own. And it's a way different framework. And yeah, it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, love it, love it. I'm conscious of your time and also the video time as well, Tom. So what I'm going to do is wrap it up there. We've already discussed in the previous part how people can get in touch with you. Listen, I have such great gratitude for yourself. I know you're a busy man this morning for giving me time, and hopefully there's a lot of great content in our discussion that we've just had that can help a few people who might be struggling this morning.
Definitely. It's a pleasure, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Right, absolute pleasure again.